Hey everybody, I'm back. We're back for another episode of Malika Talks. Let's just wait for a couple of people to join us and then we can go. Hey guys. This is so oh my days. Okay, I'm not going to touch this screen. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you've had an amazing weekend, a week. Full transparency, I'm ill. But I've been in my house. I'm in my house. So, and it's just a cold. But yeah, hey everybody. I see our special guest has just joined us. So, welcome to Malika Talks. I'm Malika. This is Malika Talks in association with She Said So. Thank you guys for joining. Today we have a special guest. I'm really excited. I'm really excited about all of our guests that we have, to be honest, because people just taking time out of their day to be here. But we have an amazing special guest. This is her first live, so be very kind to her, even though I know you guys will be. And I'm gonna bring in my special guest now. Let's see where she is. Hi.
I appreciate you introducing me with the knowledge that this is my first ever Instagram live. So thank you.
Was that a good thing, or was it a what was it?
No, now everyone knows. Everyone's gonna be watching and knowing this is the first one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Even when I said it, I thought maybe this isn't the best thing to say, but I'm sorry. But it's fine. It's going to be an amazing experience. It's going to be so fun. I'm so excited to have you here.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat.
Well, no, it's important, especially with this platform, especially with Malika Talks, to have women who are, doing amazing things, just in business, culturally as well. And I think that some of the things that you've been doing are very culturally relevant and really interesting and stuff that we could talk about. So, yes.
Thank you.
Oh wait, hold on. Do we have a question before we start? I don't want to lose.
No, I think it's my mate who I was texting just before this.
No
potatoes. So
no worries. I have friends like this too. Where they don't take my job seriously at all. It's fine.
I appreciate it. I'm here for potato chat in the Instagram live.
I mean, we can have. Okay, so what was the potato chat exactly? What were you guys talking about?
Well, she was just asking if I knew that potatoes were linked with Idaho, which I didn't. This is really terrible Instagram chat. I'm sorry.
No, because if it was like a recipe thing, maybe like I could have I know how to make really good roast potatoes.
Okay, well, actually, for real, maybe after this, if you could hit me up about the roast potatoes.
The roast potatoes?
Yeah, I don't really have them down still, so.
Okay, well, you know what? I'll tell you now, and then I can message you, because then I can just share with anybody else in the chat. And to be honest, I genuinely, I love to cook. So anybody who follows me on my page, they'll see me cooking anyway. But a really good trick with roast potatoes, this was not the chat. A really good thing with roast potatoes is if you boil them, and then before you put them in the oven, you basically empty out all of the water from the pot, and you just maybe put a little bit of oil and you sort of cook them just in an empty dry pot, because then it makes them crumble a little bit, and then that's how you get the edges all crumbly, and then you put them in the oven and then they crisp.
All right,
so,
that shot. Thank you.
For everybody. Anyway, now we've got that out of the way.
Important chat.
How are you? How have you been?
Yeah, I've been all right, thank you. It's obviously a weird time, but I've been lucky that I guess I've been able to work through it. So
yeah.
How about you? How are things with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very similar. I'm lucky that I've been able to work. I've started doing this Malika Talks with She Said So. So I'm getting to speak to amazing people and learn about different things, different genres, different crafts, different bits of business. So it's you know, like you said, I've just been really lucky. I've been able to work as well, and you know, luckily, like touch wood, that like COVID hasn't like affected anybody close to me like severely, or you know. So yeah, just really thankful and grateful, and I think using this time to just grow and do more and be more grateful and be more appreciative.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. So how would you introduce yourself? Like my intro was just, usually I let the guest introduce themselves genuinely, but how would you introduce yourself?
So my name's Tara Joshi, and I'm the music editor for Galdem magazine, and I'm also a freelance culture writer. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't normally do this side of things. I normally interview other people, right? So talking about myself is not something that I'm so good at yet. But
So what made you say yes to this? Was it
it
Emma?
did.
Was it Emma? Did she
Yes.
force you?
I guess I said yes to this for a couple reasons. I'm trying to be a bit better about talking stuff in general, but also because I think that knowing that I used to think that to be in the music industry and like to be a music journalist or whatever, you had to be a certain kind of person and that you had to be like really self-confident and really like extroverted, really on it. And like, I'm not like that. Like, I'm like quite shy and awkward and like pretty introverted. And I think it's kind of important to me for like younger journalists, particularly like young women of color, to be able to see that like, okay, there's more than one way to do this. So yeah, if I can come on an Instagram live and ramble a bit nervously, then I guess I should do it, right? It's the
Honestly, it is the. I wasn't expecting that answer. I wasn't expecting that response at all. And I think that it's very self-deprecating of you to be like, you know, I'm a bit awkward and like shy and all of those kind of things. Like, I totally understand what you mean. I think that we've grown up in a time where it seems like celebrities have it all together, or they're like, you know, people that we might look up to, they don't even have to be celebrities, just people that you look up to, your parents, aunties, uncles, like relationship stuff, celebrities. It just seems like everybody knows what they're doing apart from you.
yeah, exactly.
Everybody's got life down pat, everybody knows how to do it. So I think that the fact that whatever has shifted within you, and you're like, actually, maybe let me just go out here and show others, like, because there will be other people like you. And honestly, 9 times out of 10, nobody knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I think. I also think this year has kind of made it a bit easier to do stuff like this because it's just like, well, ultimately, I'm just sitting in my bedroom, right? So,
Literally, like, I was thinking to myself when I was getting ready, my outfit is from ASOS, by the way,
nice.
everybody. But yeah, I was getting ready and I was so excited to just sit in like my office and be on the internet with somebody. Like, took so much joy and pleasure, and I thought, once upon a time, like if somebody had said like, oh, can you do like a, not even once upon a time, I've done sessions before, like, oh, can you do like Zoom sessions and stuff? And it's just like, oh, my day is what, my house, like, and I've got to get ready. And whereas now it's it's like, it's just normal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just kind of chill. So,
Literally, no pressure. Are you looking forward to getting out more, I suppose, and the world opening up?
um, yes and no. I am excited, and like I haven't been to a gig in over a year, which is really strange for me. Like I used to go to gigs like once a week. So but I feel like I'm like tentatively excited about it.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know how comfortable I would feel getting back into those spaces and like being around that many people again.
Mhm.
But, you know, in theory, I'm excited for when it happens.
So, I've read some of your articles, and one of my favorites was your one about you spending like making friends with people in the
Oh
TV.
God.
And I can't remember. There is like, I just want to read. If I lift up my computer, it means I've got to put in my password. But there was a word you use, like into something and social,
It's a parasocial interaction, I think it's called.
parasocial interaction.
Yeah. You know when you write something and like in the moment you're like, yeah, this is how I'm feeling, or I guess like writing is my medium, but I imagine everyone in the creative sphere, like, you know, has something where they like put down how they're feeling in a moment, and then you look back on it and like it's like I'm glad that I was like vulnerable with that piece and spoke about how I was feeling, but also it makes me seem so unhinged that I'm like, you know, oh yeah, all the friends I made with TV characters. But I stand by it. You know, I just finished the series Superstore recently, and now I miss the characters. So I think I'm still just living my weird parasocial interaction life. It's fine.
Yeah,
This
but
is
I think everybody's been doing that. Like, I don't, like, yeah, like, there's nothing wrong with it. I didn't read it at all and think this
is
girl's
she okay?
yeah, there was none of that, right? But that's just because, like, I do spend a lot of time in my flat. Like, I live by myself. I spend a lot of time in my flat. I spend a lot of time by myself because I genuinely just need zen, and my family can be very chaotic. Shout out to my family. But yeah, so I understood that. Like, I understood what you meant. Like, sometimes I just sit and just turn everything off and just sit and just digest podcasts, or just digest TV shows, or even what I started doing recently. This is okay. This is me. This is me sounding unhinged. Is listening to, like, you know, meditation music.
Hmm.
Like, just because it's just so calming, like just waking up in the morning and just putting that on, and it's not
Well, that just sounds
loud.
nice. That's yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, honestly, it's just, it's the most I don't know, it's just, it's such a calming feeling.
Mm.
So that's like my little unhinged
I
unhinged
feel I
secret.
feel like we all just like, you know, we all had our coping mechanisms this year, and that's, you know,
That was
it is
yours.
what it is. Yeah. It remains.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I watched Insecure as well over this
Oh my
period.
God.
So when you were saying it, like, how come, like, you were saying to your friend that, like, why all the characters are so good looking, and just like, how upset are you that this is the final season of Insecure?
I'm so upset. And also, but then I get really upset when I remember that Lawrence got Condola pregnant. Like, sorry for spoilers if people are not a fan
Guy,
of
the show's
Insecure,
been
but
out. It's their
it's
fault. It's
been
not ours. It's their
far.
fault.
Yeah, exactly. I'm stressed. I don't know how it's gonna end.
Okay, prediction. I'm gonna predict, and then you have to predict.
Okay.
I'm gonna predict that the baby isn't his, but I feel like that's
Uh,
just what I want.
yeah, I mean, yes, that is what I would want. But I don't know. It seems unlikely, right? I feel like she was pretty committed.
Thank you. Oh, no, do you know what they actually might do? And this is not like wishing it,
Mm.
but like on anybody, but maybe they might, because you know, Insecure, like, they do tackle some serious subjects, and maybe it might be like a miscarriage thing. Like, maybe she has a miscarriage, and then
Oh, damn.
they deal with that. Like, I could see them doing that. I could see them, because I think that that is something that a lot of women do go through and have been through, and it's something that isn't necessarily really talked about. So from a cultural perspective, it could actually be that could be the story.
Yeah, yeah, that could work. I, d- I feel like it might just be one of those things though, where it's like, you know, this stuff happens. Like you,
Yeah, that
you,
too.
you, you break up with someone and then fall back in love with them, and then like they've got someone else pregnant. You know, like I guess it's just
It does happen.
it happens. I guess. But I'm very excited to see what happens. I'm very excited for the return of Asian Bay. Um,
That he was very hot. The hair, and just
mhm.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so I suppose the most interesting thing that I found in this conversation thus far, right, this whole like 15 minutes that we've been on, is when you said your name, you said Tara Joshi. Did you, is that how
Yeah.
you? And when you said it, I felt bad because I've been saying, "Oh, Tara Joshi," da, 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 da. And I know it's like a pronunciation thing, right? But I suppose, is Joshi is it a common name from like in your heritage?
Yeah, yeah, it's like a very like yeah, a pretty common name in India, which is where my family's from. But like it's just one of those things where like, I grew up not correcting people on it.
Yeah,
But like I grew up in a very white area anyway, so
same
I
here.
think now in like more recent years I have tried to be a bit more like on it with correcting people just because like I mean it's your name, but I'm not going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe you said it wrong, when like if you haven't heard it before, you
Yeah,
know it's just one of those things.
but like I mean, on Malika Talks, like we do talk a lot about like culture and heritage and stuff like that. So it's like, even me, Malika, the other day, like I was booking an appointment for something and she was like, "What's your name?" And I was like, "Oh, it's Malika." And she was like, "Okay, Millie." And
Oh,
I sat there and I was like, do I correct this woman or do I just let her call me Millie? Like, it doesn't really matter. Um, but I suppose it does matter. And sometimes it matters more than others.
mm.
Um, but like I just said, like when you said Joshi, I was just like, wow, like sometimes not sometimes there's such a cultural difference across the board,
Mm.
even within cultured people, I think that sometimes it's like it's like a silent thing. It's like a silent taboo kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, well, I just think it's one of those things that like, you know I guess like I'm trying to think. I think in some cases, if I've done like a radio appearance or something, for example,
Yeah.
like sometimes, when I've been on the Asian network, like people won't check and then like they'll say it wrong.
Right.
And
Okay.
I was on One Extra a few months ago, and like before it went live, they were just like, listen, like, can we just check? How do we pronounce your surname? And it was just like, I think it is just about taking that extra like 30 seconds or whatever it is to just be like,
Yeah.
just to clarify. But I mean, it's also the difference between us doing this as an Instagram live versus like if this was an in-person chat, because like then we would have had that time beforehand to like talk, whereas this is just like,
Absolutely.
hi, I've never met you. Let's get straight on a call in front of people who, yeah, so
Literally.
it's fine.
I mean, obviously, it's not an intentional thing.
No.
No, not. I don't even mean from my perspective. Sorry, I'm sick. Sorry. Um, so bear with me. Yeah, not an intentional thing, but I just think it's interesting from like a cultural perspective how those things can be misinterpreted. And I think 9 times out of ten, if you get my name wrong, I kind of don't care. Like, I'm probably never going to see you again. Do you know what I mean? But then there may be just like that one day, like I said the other day, when the woman was like, "Oh yeah, Millie," and it was just like, do I correct her? And I spent time going back and forth in my mind about whether to correct her, whether it was important. And fundamentally, it comes down to culture. It comes down to culture. It comes down to heritage. It comes down to this massive, like the massive race issues that we've that that Black people have definitely been experiencing, but people of color experience on a day-to-day basis. Because if my name was Tom, she would have just been like, she probably would have asked. She probably would have said, "Oh, is that Tom or Thomas? Like,
Mm.
how would you prefer to be?" You
Yeah.
know. And I think it's a really, really small, insignificant topic and issue, but in the wider scheme of things, it
I mean, I don't
contributes.
even know if it's like small and insignificant, right? Like it's your name. It's like, and I think it's interesting that, you had to spend that time with, the weighing up of will I correct her on this, because
Yeah.
like you end up taking the weight of that.
Yeah.
And like it's interesting how we've all sort of been taught to do that in some shape or form. But yeah, let me not get too into like racial trauma, because we'll be
No,
here on that one.
honestly, like this, like I know obviously this is like a weird, this is a weird dynamic, but my one of the first episodes that I did with Rosanna Reed, we spoke about race for like 2 hours. That wasn't even what we were supposed to be talking about. She works in PR, and I'm so devastated. That
Rosanna's great. She's
yeah,
lovely.
she's phenomenal. She's so phenomenal, and I'm so devastated that we lost that footage because it was such a. I had like all of these questions, all of these things I wanted to talk to her about, and then she mentioned that she was part Guyanese, and I'm like, oh my days, I'm part Guyanese, and I wasn't going to say anything because like, who cares? Like that's not what we're going to talk about. And then something in me was just like, say it, and I said it, and then we just went down this whole authentic, genuine rabbit hole about race and how it is that people see us. Like I'm just seen as just a black girl, which
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with that. But actually, my heritage is my mum is mixed race. She's half Guyanese and half white. My dad is half Jamaican and half Cuban. And so I'm a mix of all of those kinds of things. I then have a younger brother who his father is white and he looks white. And then we sort of had a whole discussion about how like colorism is in my family. Like I call us the United Colors of Benetton because literally like there are white people darker than my little brother.
Yeah.
So, color and race and like this is such an open space for us to talk about anything. And I think that culture is really important. It's important to talk about. It's not necessarily something that we want to talk about all the time
Mm-hmm.
because it can be quite heavy.
Yeah.
And I know in your article you did reference saying that like you tried to not really consume too much heavy negative stuff because it's constant. Um, so I totally understand if that's not what you want to do, but equally, it's a safe space to do it.
I appreciate that. Um, I mean, I feel like naturally in talking about like the music industry and whatever, like we will end up coming back to this place. So
Absolutely, probably.
it's a damning insight into my thoughts on the music industry, maybe. But
Okay. All right. So we can get into it. I
yeah,
suppose I'm just gonna like try to look at my terrible handwriting. I was supposed to print these off, but we moved.
fine.
Um. Okay. What was like the most pivotal thing that made you become a writer, or was it something that you've always wanted to do? Is it something that that you always knew you wanted to do?
Um, so like I always wanted to write. Um, like I was always writing or like doing terrible art or whatever, like I think I was always interested in this. But music writing and culture journalism specifically, um, I started a music blog when I was a teenager. So I grew up on the Isle of Wight and didn't really have friends who liked the same music as I did. Like I was very much like on MySpace, trawling through all these like, yeah, at that point unknown artists and just getting really into that. So I just would like share that love on the internet. Um, and then I guess when I got to uni, I just sort of carried on doing that on the side. So I was like really involved in student media, and became like the music editor at my uni magazine, that kind of thing. But I didn't think it was going to be my job. Like I didn't really like. I feel like, as is true across like I guess the music industry in general and like other creative industries, you're kind of told that you have to have like your bread and butter, and then that can be like the fun thing you're doing as a hobby, but it's really unlikely that you'll actually get to do that as your job. um so I guess I was just always writing on the side of other things that I was doing, and Yeah, I honestly like I'm still a bit like I don't really understand how this is my job. But it's cool. I'm very fortunate in that sense. But I have forgotten what your question was. So
It was like, how did you get into becoming a journalist? Like, was it something that you always wanted to do? Did you think you would always um,
uh,
always get here? But I feel like you kind of answered it though, to be fair.
yeah. Yeah, I mean in terms of like the sort of writing that I would like to be doing more of, I don't think journalism was necessarily like the dream thing that I wanted to do when I was like a teenager or whatever, but it's just like the most like for me it felt like the clearest route to get to a point where writing could be my work.
Yeah.
But obviously when you make something you love your work, it kind of is like a weird balancing act because it's then your work and then it's a source of stress sometimes, a lot of the time.
All
Um,
the time.
yeah, but you know, like it makes me appreciate like spending more time trying to do like weird personal essays about watching TV or like you know, trying to do more fiction stuff and just, you know, there are other kinds of writing that I would like to do, but I'm really grateful to be able to spend a lot of my time just getting gassed about artists that I like. And, you know, the fact that that's my job, I am very grateful that I get to do that. Yeah.
And can I ask you, like, coming from an Asia background,
Mm.
and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Like, are your family supportive, or was that difficult for you to, um, like, was it difficult for them to understand, or just out of curiosity?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I guess the thing about, you know, finding something else as your main thing and doing this on the side as a hobby was very much a narrative that I got from my parents. And like I totally get that like from their perspective, like coming to this country as immigrants and like the ideas of like what a like secure job is, what secure employment is. Um and for them, you know, arts journalism wasn't exactly top of that list. And
Right.
that's like I completely get it. And you know they're supportive now. It like I remember earlier on in my career having like a lot of phone calls with my dad about, you know, but why don't you think about teaching? And then my mom like trying to send me like links to the civil service like exams or whatever it's called, like the fast track scheme, just like, you know, like maybe you do this because I did history at uni, so like
Right.
just like here are other things that you could do. And like I think even like, oh, would you consider like trying to do law? And it's like none of these things are things that I'm actually interested in doing.
Yeah.
um but you know I get that it comes from like a place of just worrying about me and like, yeah, first generation pressure, exactly, just like the expectations that they've come to this country with, and I guess what like their extended family would want for me as well. So like, you know, I know it never came from like a bad place, and now they're both like happy that I do what I'm doing. So
I think it's just from like a cultural perspective, and oh hey Rosanna, we were just talking about you. You just come in the chat, like good things. I'm telling them how we lost the footage of our first chat, which I'm still devastated about. I literally tell her this all the time that I'm devastated about how we lost it. Anyway, but yeah, I think now our parents or even like our grandparents are seeing that these things are possible. Like my nan, she wanted to sing and stuff, but she never really did, and it just wasn't there wasn't really a possible outlet for her. And depending on how young or old people's parents are, there might not have been an outlet. My parents, well, I mean, my mum's a teacher, but my dad worked in music, and had like pirate radio stations and stuff like that. So I was always around. Yeah, it was crazy. But I was always around music and stuff, and so I've always been very much supported by my family. But that's just I know that's not everybody's story, and especially when you're talking about different ethnicities, there are limitations, and that like your parents have experienced limitations, and they just don't want you to go through their similar struggles. So, like you say, it doesn't come from a bad place.
Yeah, no, completely.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, you know, I think like it's that like balancing thing between them, I guess, coming to this country with the idea that, you know, you give your kids a better life, but then like what their idea of that better life was maybe doesn't like coexist with what your own idea of that is. That yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
cool. Like,
But that's life, I suppose.
yeah.
Um, how have you? How are you different? How long have you been writing? Actually, I know you said you started a music blog when you were younger, in your teens or whatever. But how long would you say that like, you've probably been writing? And it could be from like when you were 13. That's fine, but just
Uh, yeah, I mean, it really depends, like, on what we're classifying as writing, I guess. But I mean, yeah, I guess I started like logging and stuff when I was like 15, but I always had a diary when I was a kid. I still have a diary now. I but I think in terms of like journalistic writing and like
yeah.
actually writing for publications, my math is so bad, you know. Like I'm trying to figure this out.
It's
I think I've
okay.
got I think I've
Ballpark,
got like
ballpark.
yeah, like maybe it's been five 5 years since my first paid commission, 6 years.
Okay, wow, okay.
Yeah,
And do you
I'm pretty old. I really have to say this.
absolutely not. You've like literally, and even if you are, just tell them you're 22 and you'll be fine. But what was I going to say? The question was, yeah, how have you evolved? So, how have you felt that you've evolved in that time as a
Uh,
writer?
as a writer, I
Yeah.
think it's just about like the more you write, the more confident you get in what your voice is. Like I do mentoring sessions sometimes with young writers or like people who are like just starting out. And a lot of them do have that question about like how do you find your voice? And it was never like a conscious thing for me to be like, you know, this is the style that I write in or whatever. But like it I think it is just the more that you do it, the more that like you stop worrying about it.
Right.
Um and so yeah, I feel like I mean with that said, I also still have a lot of self-doubt about my writing, which I think every writer I know has this. So like, you know, you'll send in a piece to an editor and just be sitting there all day being like, that's like garbage. I've just turned in the worst piece of writing of my life, and everyone will know that I'm a big fake. And I think everyone kind of goes through that. So I want to say that like I'm more confident in my writing now and like that is how I've developed. But that's not always true. But
I literally was going to ask you, do you think you're a confident writer? But do you think that's based off of um, your talent, yeah, or just your confidence? Like do you get the difference? Because like I know I can sing,
mm,
but then I will write a song, or I know I can write a song and I'll write it, and then I'll listen to it a couple of times, be like, oh my days, this is the best thing ever, and then and then I'll like cut to next scene. my sorry, my brother just tried to call me. Cut to next scene, I'll be like, this is the worst thing ever. I'm just maybe I'm not good enough. Like, so is it your where does the confidence lack, would you say?
um, I think it varies. Like I think definitely like I do know that I can write things at this point. Like I
Yeah.
think it would be a bit yeah, like I do get that I can write things, but I think when you're writing and you're in the moment of it, then sometimes and if it's like hard to get the words out for whatever reason, then and again, I'm definitely not alone in this. Like I have a lot of writer friends who I think maybe once a week one of us will like be spiraling in the group chat being like, I don't know how to write, I've forgotten how to do them. So I think it's normal and that's okay. But I guess it's gotten a bit easier for me to take more on, which is maybe a bit different. Like I used to like spend a really long time like agonizing over one piece and how to get that right, whereas now obviously like I'll be working on several things at once and like so I guess in that sense it's like I am a bit more confident and like less worried about stuff.
Yeah.
And I think with like the editing process as well, I think I used to get really freaked out if I would turn in something and that an editor, like if they sent back a lot of edits, that was like it being a really bad piece. But I think once you get more into it and get over yourself a little bit, like you're just like, okay, well, this is just how the process works and that's fine. I think it helps that I also work as an editor. So like working on both sides of that process, I think has made me a bit more relaxed about my writing.
Do you know what? It's genuinely, I love this chat because it's like you're in my head. Because my next question was going to be, but you kind of just answered it. It was going to be, how do you deal with like the feedback, like when you do have to make edits, and how has your process differed from maybe when you first started, and how you would deal with it, or how you would feel to now. But I feel like you've answered it anyway, so it doesn't it doesn't
Sorry.
even matter. Um, what would you say that has been like a pivotal moment in your writing career thus far?
Um, like with my writing itself, or like just in general, or
Yeah, with your writing, or just in general,
God, I just
whichever.
don't know. Like it's weird, isn't it? Like it, like I was saying at the beginning, like I'm not really used to answering these questions, and now I realize when I'm asking artists these kinds of questions, they probably don't have this answer at the top of their heads, because I definitely don't. Uh, I I don't know. Do you like rank bits of your career? Sorry.
Absolutely,
Yeah, I should.
absolutely. But then, but don't ask me. Don't
No.
specifically
Okay. All
ask
right.
me because
Uh, um, I don't know. I guess there are maybe a couple things that um like this one's a bit more of a negative one, but I think it's maybe important to touch on within the framework of like I don't know, like being like a black woman and a woman of color in the music industry.
yeah,
Um, so like I guess after uni, my first like so I did a journalism masters then, and after that, I didn't get a journalism job. I started working for a music tech company, and was freelancing on the side of that. And I went to the Great Escape, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is like this like big music industry showcase and festival kind of thing.
yeah,
Um, and I was pretty excited to go and like meet lots of people, but and this was like a, a good few years ago now at this point. But at that point, like there would be so many like conferences and like mixers and whatever, and I would be like the only woman of color there, like no black women, like
wow,
just like, and it was a really like jarring feeling. And I I don't know, like I expressed it to this white guy who was working in music PR, who I'd met like a couple times before. Um, and I like I sort of said it to him that I was like, it feels kind of weird actually. Like you hear about how white and male the music industry is,
yeah,
but then like actually being in those spaces and actually really feeling it
yeah,
is a bit different. And I said to him that I was like feeling a bit like weird about it, and he was just like, oh, well, like you should just be grateful to be here, like
oh,
um and you know I got I got really upset, and it kind of like I spent the next week or so like really trying, like considering, is this the industry that I want to work in? Because if that's how it's perceived, that like the only reason that I'm working in music is because like, you know, I'm ticking some boxes for people. Um, and I think in terms of what it then did for me as a writer, but also just as a person, it's kind of made me be like, okay, no, like you're just gonna call this stuff out from now on. And I think it's like a big part of like that's around the time that I started working for Galdem. And like I think I used to be a bit more like, oh, you shouldn't say anything. You should just like, you know, you can like think about it, but you like don't call this stuff out. But I think that moment kind of changed how I felt about it, because it was just like no one's like if like people aren't giving you that respect, then like why are you like shrinking yourself and like, you know.
I love this. I really love this because I had a similar moment. Um, I'm trying to think how I can say it without it being too obvious. But I did have a similar moment in terms of um, somebody just not owning my voice. So actually, I had a conversation the other day. This is a totally different story, but I had a conversation literally last week, and somebody asked me to sing on something, and they were like, "We really want you to sing on it. Like, we just want your voice. Like, nobody can whatever. Like, we love your voice and we want you." And I was like, "But I'm really focusing on my artist stuff, and the two are no longer separate. They're not mutually exclusive. You have to take, if you're going to take my voice, or if you want my voice, you're going to have to have my artist career as well. Like they go hand in hand. Whereas before, like you said, I used to really shrink myself and feel like if I spoke up, I would be like, you know, a bit the black girl with the attitude, or you know, just saying too much, or it's a real it's similar to the conversation with the Millie woman that I had in my head. Like we have these back and forths, like this doesn't feel right, and it's not necessarily a problem because maybe they don't know better. Like it may not be intentional. It may, and sometimes it really is, but but they may not. So how do I combat that? But that was such a big moment for me to even just stand up for myself, and not worry also about losing the opportunity,
Totally.
and
That's
worry.
amazing. That's like such an amazing moment to get to. Like,
Yeah, absolutely, and just having the freedom to speak out. Like, I mean, that's been a lot of my fears in the past working in music, is that if I say something, if I speak up, I will lose the opportunity. Like, is that something that you've felt that you've is that like part of the reason as well why maybe in the past you had felt like you couldn't speak up?
yeah, I think the way that this industry operates is like it makes you feel like you should be grateful to be there, right? Like, you know, like very few people get these jobs, like all that kind of thing. You should be grateful to be paid a lot less than most other industries, like all of this kind of thing. And I just, yeah, I don't know. And you know, it's exhausting holding on to it though. It's exhausting to pretend that like it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
So like I think I just kind of got to a point where I was a bit tired of like doing that thing of like choosing your battles. And obviously you still have to do that. You always have to do that. But
absolutely.
you know, like I think at least having some things where I was like, okay, like this is like your threshold and this is the point at which you will speak up about something. But you know, like I mean, obviously like we're talking about race right now, but like even like knowing so many like women who work in music and like, you
Absolutely.
know, just there are just so many stories of like really horrible, you know, like abusive behavior that's happening behind the scenes, and like people are afraid to speak up because like you're made to feel that like your job is precarious if you do so, that you're going to be a troublemaker if you speak out. And I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think that this sort of feeling that is like intentional as an industry, that like we've been made to feel this way. But I think in having conversations like this, that hopefully we can start to be a bit like, well, actually, this is messed up. Like, I shouldn't be made to feel like I'm going to lose my job if I like say something about racism, or if I say something about sexism, you know, like that's wild.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think we're in like the beginning stages. But then, it's a lot of people don't even realize their the systemic racism or the systemic sexual sexism.
Mm.
Like, I was speaking to a very good friend of mine, really, really good friend of mine, works in music, married, has kids, happy, like cool. We were working together the other day,
Mm.
and we were talking about sexism, and he was like, I would never, right? And but when I first met him, he would have this joke. It was like an inappropriate joke, and I um I have a lot of male friends, so when boys do stupid things, 9 times out of 10, I just ignore them or I give them as good as they get, and I really just don't care, right? But there was this specific joke, and I had to explain to him because he remembered it when I said, "Oh, you used to say this stuff to me." Um, but before then, he would have literally, hands down, been like, "I've never said anything to make a woman feel intentionally, been inappropriate and da, da, da." And I was like, no, but that specific joke, if I was a different type of person, um, you just don't know what it would have done. Like, I wouldn't have known how to respond. And I had to explain to him that even in that moment, even when he said the joke, and it was like an ongoing joke. So it was like every time I would come to the session for a period of time, there would be this thing, and it'd be like me, the only female in a room with like a couple of men, more than two, but less than five, recording and stuff. And I was like, if I had responded how I wanted to respond, which is, that's not funny, why are you making that joke? I never ever come in with that energy. If I had spoken up, I had to say to him the other day, I was like, you lot would have probably not worked with me ever again. And I would have been known as somebody who couldn't take a joke, or the crazy girl, or
Yeah.
overreacting. And that is just something that we as women live with. And then as a black person, it's something that you live with on top of that. And a lot of the time, people just don't understand that. Like, he only understood how inappropriate what he used to say was once I explained to him and like broke it down. But that's like over a decade later that I'm having this conversation with him.
Yeah.
You know?
But I mean, it's good that you had the conversation with him.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And he said he's going to go home and talk to his son. He's got a young son, like really, really young, like less than 10. But he was like, after having this conversation, I'm going to go home and have that conversation, or start having these types of conversations, because it's important. It's important for men to be having those conversations with other young boys and young men, and just old men as well. But it's also important for us women to be able to have that space. But it's very few and far between. It's just because he's like a good friend, and I was even scared to kind of bring it up, actually, because I didn't want him to think I was being funny or like I'd held on to it. But I'm glad I did say something. So
yeah, no, because I do think, especially when it's a friend, sometimes it's much harder to like call someone out on that. So
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Another one of your articles that I read that I really, it genuinely touched me, and it made me feel very ignorant, was the one that you wrote about disabled people, or able able-bodied people in music?
Yeah. So I mean, this is something that I think music journalism in general should probably do better with, and like the music industry as a whole. But
Yeah.
like that was just so at Galden we do a weekly music roundup, which sort of looks at a music news story from that week and then rounds up like five of the best releases of that week as well. So I think that week what had happened was Youth Music, who are this incredible charity, had done this survey as regards the realities of um, trying to be a disabled musician. So like awareness of like instruments, for example, that have been made, which like yeah are like accessible, like and just like even like whether or not venues are accessible not only for like audience members but also for the artists actually playing the venues, and like so many of them aren't, and I think it's something that this year in general has been really interesting because a lot of things that I think prior to the pandemic, the disabled community were told that, you know, oh, well, it's just not really possible to like have remote working, or like it's not really possible to like make these venues accessible, or like, you know, it's not logistically easy to like do live streams for every show or whatever it is. But now it's like all of that stuff is possible. So I think, um, and obviously, like, you know, it's not for me to be leading on those kinds of conversations, but I think it is important that we do keep having those conversations and think about, well, now things are opening up again, how can we bring that energy and accessibility to like venues, to studios, like, you know, everything. I think it's important that we keep going with that. Yeah.
And did you actually are these like is this some of this like feedback that you've got from actual disabled people who have said that this is stuff that have been said to them, like it's not able, or we're not able to do live streams or remote sessions and da da da, or yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is me picking up from various things that I've read
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
past year.
yeah.
I haven't written a specific piece on this, um, but I think a couple of days ago, actually, on Galden, we ran a piece by this incredible disabled writer who they wrote about how, like in general, how after this year, like we still need to stand in solidarity with the disabled community, and like, you know, it can't
Absolutely.
just be um, because, you know, there has been like a lot of weird ableism around the idea of like, you know, well, why can't some people just stay home shielding so the rest of us can have the world opened up and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. It's like quite gross and weird. But yeah, I mean, if anyone is interested in reading stuff on that, there are a few Galdem articles, which I think do a really good job
Yeah.
exploring that stuff.
Like literally it's so funny because like when I was reading the article, it's just something that never, as a singer and a songwriter, cool, but I've just never thought of the limit. Like I just worry about like my limitations of just being me or like my peers, but which is hard enough. But to then put somebody that's like disabled or doesn't maybe, you know, or just any type of disability, right? It doesn't matter. And the bit that I've read, it just made me think, and it was just like, wow, like this is a whole nother level of consideration that we need to take. And I will, when I repost this, I will put there was a company or a scheme or something. There was a couple of things in the
Yeah,
article that you referenced, so I'll put those in the description box as well for people
yeah, definitely.
to follow as well, because yeah, it's just, yeah, it's a really, really, it's an interesting topic, and it's something that has really genuinely made me think as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time it's just about, like it's a bit of a cheesy thing to say, but that whole like, no one's free until we're all free kind of thing. And it's just like, I think like when we're having conversations about like equity and accessibility and all those things, like I think all of these conversations have to happen hand in hand for the industry to really, be a friendly, safe space for everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, it was a powerful piece, definitely. Um, what, how did you get into, like, I know you said you started working with Galdem a couple of years ago. Like, how did you go about getting your first paid work? Were you interning, or were you, like, did you just send
Um,
out your CV? Was it pretty straightforward?
like for like in journalism or just um no, so I mean I have done some like work experience and internship kind of things, but I also like um I think I just cold pitched a lot of places. So like, sending emails to editors you've never spoken to with ideas for stuff and just being
Mm.
like, hello, my name's Tara, I'm a journalist, I promise. Even though you're not really at that point. And just seeing what lands. So like, when I was first pitching, and like the first paid commission I got, I was working at a cinema at the time. Like I wasn't, in that world yet. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think it is important for people to be honest about this stuff because I think a lot of the time, you know, you do that thing where you look at how everyone else is doing, and you're like, oh my God, why aren't I there yet?
Yeah.
But it took me years. Like I did loads of random jobs, and was just writing freelance on the side, and then yeah, was working for a music tech company and like writing articles on the side of that. And it was only, um, I got made redundant from there, um, and so decided to try full-time freelancing for a bit, um, and then got the music editor role at Galdem, but that was when everything at Galdem was still voluntary, so we only became an official business. Um, I want to say just over 2 years ago. So like before that, everyone was volunteers. So then, and then yeah, from like 2 years ago, started getting paid for like my part-time work at Galdem. And I'm still part-time there, so like spend the rest of my week like chasing invoices and doing all that kind of thing. So it's just I think like again, like I'm grateful to do what I do. I like what
Yeah.
I do, but it's like it's not like this smooth sailing thing, and I think it is important to just be real about that because I certainly used to get stressed, and I still get stressed sometimes when I see how other people are doing, and it's like, oh my God, what am I doing? But like that's normal when I just think everyone's just on their own path or whatever.
Absolutely. And honestly, like I said, I'm sick. I feel like I'm saying it so that I get some attention. I don't
I
know
was
where
gonna
I'm looking
say,
for that.
like,
But literally, because I live by myself, it's just like, it's just anyway. But yeah, no, why I say that because I'm sick. But needing to take some time off,
mm,
and I just can't. I just have so much stuff to do, and if I don't do it, when you work for yourself, it's like you just can't. And literally after today, I'm gonna like force myself because if I don't, I'm
you
just
have
gonna,
to take some rest. Yeah.
honestly, literally. But it's so hard. There's so much stuff that I have to do for work, and then um, I'm having some work done at my flat as well. So my house is just up. Well, my flat is just upside down. I need to tidy that, oversee this. Do you know what I mean? It's constant. And then on top of that, you're chasing invoices. You're looking for new work. and have to post and be present, and it's a lot. But like I said, I did hear something the other day that it's like, if you want time off of work, work for somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I yeah, it's I'm not very good at taking time off from Galdem or from freelancing in general, but I am grateful that I do at least work part-time somewhere that does give me the option to do that, because otherwise I think it would be very bad. Like the few months where I was just full-time freelance, I was like not okay. Like I would be like up writing at 3 a.m. kind of vibes.
All
Like
the
just
time.
like, why are you doing this? So yeah, I feel you. But it's important to rest. I think, you know, the way the world works, it makes you think that rest is bad, but rest is like the best thing. Like, yeah.
No, it's so important. And I mean, I've been working in music for 13 years. So like straight out of uni, like I mean, I've always sung and written and stuff, but like I had like my first big song when I was in uni.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, thank you so much, Rosanna. She's just so sweet, just like popping in. This is the love I need, see. But yeah, I've been working for like 13 years, and literally it was like last year, just before the pandemic, I was in LA, and I had gone out there and I was going to do some sessions. And anyway, by the time I got there, half of them just ended up not happening, or three quarters. And I was in LA for like 2 weeks by myself. So I just took the time to rest. And
Yeah.
it was in that holiday, I was like, this is why rest is so important. Like, I came back and I felt rejuvenated, I was ready, and then the whole world shut down and I stayed in my house for a year.
Wow.
But it literally took me like 12 years to realize how important taking time off, how important it is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got told off in work the other day because I haven't taken enough rest. Like I haven't taken enough leave days. So I'm trying to be better about that this year. But I think it's hard in a pandemic as well, because it's just like, well, what am I going to do? I've been working from home, so I'm going to take time off and just spend more time in my
In my
bedroom.
Honestly, I have no idea what I'm going to do for the next 5 days. Like, I plan to sleep. That's what I'm planning to do, but I already know that's not going to happen. So I'm going to probably end up working.
No, no, you have to ban yourself. Just like rewatch Insecure, right? Like just, get yourself ready for the final season.
Okay, that is the vibe. Although, to be fair, I recently started watching The Handmaid's Tale. Have you seen that?
Um, I watched the first series of it and then felt like I didn't have the mental capacity to keep watching it.
Okay,
So
so it gets worse.
yeah, that's what I hear. So
Oh, yeah. No, I literally watched like 3 episodes the other day at the weekend. Um, and I don't know if it's for a girl like me. Like, I don't think so. Um, what do you think that journalism may be lacking? Um, like, just the overall culture of journalism.
um I think there's a few things. In the UK at least, I think um there aren't enough editors of color. Um, Most people at editorial level in this country are white, which, like you need, like, I don't like to use the word diversity because I think it's a bit vague, but you do need like better representation, like at all levels, right? Like it can't just be that, okay, well now we have like more writers on the ground. It has to be like everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, but also, and I think this is like a problem that media is like trying to figure out more globally, but like, obviously at a time where there are like there's less and less money in media, so then like there are less and less staff jobs. So then when you're starting out, like to try and get that experience is quite difficult. Like everyone is just like out there crawling and scrambling for freelance bits, and it's tricky, and it's tricky to feel like legit, or like certainly I found that anyway. So I think it's just the idea that like more people that are like representative of like different sectors of society, in editorial positions, but and then also like people within those positions thinking about like how can we help with like the development of emerging writers, like how can we make this a more sustainable space for them, because we're talking about how hard it is like as a freelancer to know that you can take rest and like all of those things. But if when you're like 21 years old and you're like comparing yourself to all these other amazing people, or people who seem to be doing amazing from what you see on social media,
Yeah.
and you don't feel like you're making any progression, like when there aren't actual like in-house jobs anymore, like we have to try and think of frameworks that make people feel like they're being invested in some way, I think.
Yeah.
I don't really have answers for that stuff necessarily, but at Galden we try and do like writers salons and like have workshops with people who have pitched us, if their pitches aren't successful, being like, okay, why don't you like come to this session and we'll talk through like what it is that we're looking for. You can talk through some of your ideas with us and we can feedback. Like I think it's just important to try and like build a journalism world that feels more nurturing to people who like are coming from outside the traditional people represented in media.
For sure. I think that just the traditional way of doing things is so ingrained in a lot of us. Do you know what I mean? And it's like by the time the next generation sort of get here, there's going to be another shift that they're going to have to like. It's just like we're always working in arrears kind of thing. But absolutely, I think overall the whole nurturing, and just building the next generation up and just letting them know that I suppose a lot of what you see on social media isn't it social media.
Yeah.
How do you feel about social media and journalism, or like what do you feel like the effects that it has? What do you feel the effect it's had on journalism and like how it is that you operate, or how it is that Galdem operate, and like?
I think it's good and bad.
Yeah.
Right. Like obviously, we've spoken about all the like comparing and despairing kind of vibes of it. And the way it can like polarize people quite a lot. But, I think for me, and I think for a lot of my peers, again, like if you're not someone who, for example, has like a family member who works in journalism already or whatever, if you don't have that link, like Twitter is like invaluable. Like I got work experience at The Guardian because I DM'd someone who I'd never met, just being like, hey,
Yeah.
here's what I do. And then they could look on my Twitter and see all the stuff that I'd written. And um, you know, some of the biggest commissions that I've ever had have been like somewhat like an editor I have like no connection with, like messaging me on Twitter and being like, hey, are you taking commissions right now? Like, like I don't think, like I wish it wasn't the case that Twitter is like a really useful tool to get your work, but it's just true. Like, it is quite an important part of like how I have got to where I've got.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, so I think like there's definitely a place for social media right now anyway, but obviously like there are very few like regulations around it, and there's like so much toxicity around it, but
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, a weird space to balance.
What would you say is your favorite piece that you've written or covered, or Yeah, been involved with.
Uh, I might go. I might go for two, just to um mix it up a bit. So, uh, the story that I was telling earlier about like the Great Escape and the like terrible white dude and me coming back and being like, oh my God, like is the music industry even for me? Do I even want to do this? And that week, after I, you know, working my day job in the daytime, and then in the evening I was going to interview this artist Gaika, and like I was a really big fan of his, and so like I went to go meet him, and we just had like a really frank conversation about how jaded the music industry was making me feel. And he just totally got it. And we just had like a really open discussion about all of that stuff. And I came away from that and like wrote up the piece for Clash. And I was just kind of like, actually, yeah, like I know what I'm doing and like I'm good at this. Which is again, as I've mentioned, I guess not something I feel that often. So it's and like I very rarely read back my old work because, as is maybe a good thing when you look back on older stuff, sometimes you're like, what was I thinking? Because you have
All
like
the time.
developed in some ways, right? But um, someone said something to me the other day which reminded me of a quote from that interview, and I went back to read it. Um, and like knowing that I had written it like in my spare time because I was working a full-time job and all of that, and I was just like, this is still like a really like a piece of writing that I'm still super proud of.
Yeah.
So that is something that is still a favorite. And then the other one, I guess last year, last summer, I did a piece talking to like women and non-binary people who work in the touring industry. So like, tour managers, people who are like touring sound engineers and that kind of thing. And this was for The Guardian, and it was basically looking at like the realities of what it's like to be like a marginalized gender in those spaces. And like, it's not a nice conversation to have. It's that like yeah, a lot of the stuff that people described was horrible to hear, but I think it's important to report on those things and start those conversations. And like it was like I would be looking at some of the comments that people were writing on like the Facebook posts about it on the Guardian page and stuff, and like you had like older men who work in the music industry being like, oh, this isn't true, this isn't how it is anymore. And like it's just like there are like I think at least 8 people in this article who have gone on the record and said it is still like this. And I think I'm I'm happy that I did that piece, and that like I continue to try and do work in that vein, because I think it's important to just keep shining a light on people who again like traditionally are not necessarily like allowed to take up that space, or have been taught that if you speak up about this then your job is in danger, because it shouldn't be like that. um
Do you think
yeah.
that that's your niche, like to kind of cover things for marginalized people, and not based on color or race or sex, or do you know what I mean? But like just you've because we've spoken about a couple of things which are like real, they're just stuff that you wouldn't really think about, and they're stuff that you've like obviously covered. Um, that I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of journalists out there doing great stuff, and I'm not trying to say that you're like the poster child for any person who's being marginalized. But would you say that that is your niche?
uh I don't know if it's my niche exactly, but I think it's just something that I couldn't not write about. Like I just like again, I love getting to just write articles where it's like, I hung out with AJ Tracy, like, like that, getting to do stuff like that is fun. And like, but I just think that again, I guess you can't, like, I don't want to be like someone who's just like, removing art from its context, and like everything exists within some kind of political context, and like if there are people still being marginalized in those spaces, I think if we don't talk about them and pretend it's not there, then like we're erasing that. And like I don't want to feel like I'm ever complicit in that. So it's not like a niche that I'm trying to have. It's never been like an intentional thing. It's just like that's who I am. Like I can't not do that.
Like that's like your superpower. That's like part of your superpower.
I don't know if I would say that.
No, these are compliments. These are compliments. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I feel like I could just talk to you like for another hour.
Yeah.
Thank
you so much for having me.
I've really enjoyed it, and I will definitely put, if there's any sort of organizations or anything that you want me to add in the descriptions, please just message me after and I'll put them in. But yeah, there's been a lot of thought-provoking things that we've spoken about, so thank you so much for being a guest, and yeah, continue doing your great work and nurturing your superpower.
Thank you so much. I hope you feel better soon as well. Thank you for doing this when you're ill.
Oh, thank you for the love. I appreciate it. I'm going to go and put my pajamas on.
Good. Yeah, like go and rest for like at least a week.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna really try. But thank you so much, love. Have a lovely rest of your week. And well, I always say this, and like the end of the week is tomorrow. So enjoy your weekends. And yeah, thank you so much. And I'm sure we will speak again.
I'm sure we will. All right. Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I don't know. So guys, that was another Malika Talks in association with She Said So with me, Malika. Just want to thank Tara again for such an amazing, inspirational chat. Anybody who wants to be involved with another Malika Talks, please DM us questions for the next episode. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your week, even though today's Thursday and tomorrow is going to be Friday. See you guys later.